Hello and welcome to another edition of Critical Q&A, the show where I answer your questions based on what you've left for me in the comments section of my Q&A videos or have sent to me by email at askchrisshelton@gmail.com. I wanted to just give a little update on the channel, as I usually do for my shows here. We had a really great podcast post yesterday, and I would really like you guys to check that out. It was a very interesting conversation about faith, losing faith, crisis of faith, and atheism, and maybe not getting such a warm reception in the atheist world, and some discussion about that, and because I don't think that's really such a good idea for atheists to be doing, in other words. And anyway, we had a really nice talk this week about that on the podcast. And for those of you who are wondering, the Scientology Basics series is rolling forward. In fact, I've done a tremendous amount of work on it this week. This next episode, the first one I'm planning on doing here, is going to be on study tech. And I'm hoping to get that done this week. But there are a couple factors that are beyond my control, scheduling-wise, to make that happen. So it might be pushed forward to the week after that. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But definitely you guys are going to get a very good review on that subject with this video. So anyway, that'll be coming soon. And now let's go ahead and get on with your questions. Here we go. A.R. Struble 1. How many people do you think join the Sea Org annually? With technology and info at our fingertips, how has the Sea Org changed their recruitment from 30 years ago? I did see your podcast on recruitment tactics. Based on all of that, would you say most of the recruits are youth raised in Scientology? I would think recruiting a young adult with no real-world background would be difficult unless they were down on their luck, no family, destitute, etc., and they saw a place for food and shelter. Then the brainwashing could easily take effect. Okay, so I ran some numbers sort of looking at, how many Sea Org bases there are and how many recruiters there are and how much work they're doing, and how, from what I remembered as well, of how many recruits would come in on a week-to-week basis. And basically, I think, I'm sort of guesstimating that it's about 500 people a year get recruited into the Sea Org worldwide. It might sound a little high, but when you have 52 weeks, you got 5 Sea Org bases recruiting full-time. I think that's, maybe shooting a little low, actually, but the attrition rate is higher or as high, or around that same amount. Now, I can't, swear on that on a stack of Dynetics books or something, but I can say that they lose a lot of people, and that the Sea Org has not been a voluminously growing, exponentially expanding organization over all these years, right? They were at around, I estimated about 5,000 people back in 2012 when I left, and I think in the last 5 years they've probably lost more than they've gained. So that's, kind of numbers-wise, I think that's where it's at. Now, I think you might have a bit of a skewed view from the wording of your question as to how recruitment gets done and who gets targeted for recruitment for the Sea Org. They really go after the children of Scientologists. They go after young people. There are a few reasons for that. It wasn't always that way, and I think in terms of how it's changed over the last 30 years, I think we've seen more of a focus on younger people, and by younger I mean upper teens, early 20s, generally speaking, people who are not in college, don't have student loans, aren't professionally practicing. Highly skilled labor. Like, those are the guys you really want to get in the Sea Org these days. It used to be different in that they would go after, professionals, trained adults, this sort of thing. But the logistics of getting into the Sea Org are rough. I mean, you got to find people who can, if they have a house, they're going to sell it. If they have a car, they're probably going to sell it. They can't have, little babies and stuff, right? I mean, especially now. I mean, over the last 20 years or so, it's just been on that for the most part. For the most part, there's always exceptions, but that's kind of how that rolls. And, so you want to get people. Sea Org recruiters are constantly being hit up every week for new recruits. It's really unacceptable as a recruiter to have a big goose egg on your statistic for the week, right? Not having any recruits. That's going to get you in trouble. So they've got to go after the people. They can develop these recruitment prospects and make them happen quickly. It's always about now, speed. Gotta. And so you'll get, and that's another reason why the young demographic is the one to go after. And you can, especially, so they'll go after kids who are in Scientology schools up in Delphi, Oregon, Delphi, LA, whatever that Clearwater Academy was. Those are all private schools. Sea Org recruiters would go around there all the time to get the second gen, third gen kids, right? Another source is staff of Scientology organizations who are not yet in the Sea Org, right? Who are, that's sort of, I've explained before, you have public staff Sea Org. So that's how I got into the Sea Org. And when I was doing recruitment for the Sea Org, I recruited for a year. And I got 11 people into the Sea Org in that time. It was about one a month. And I'd be sent out to these locations like Seattle, Portland, Twin Cities. And I would find a staff member who either already wanted to come or had been thinking about it, and I'd sit them down and I'd work them over and I'd recruit them. And then I would find somebody to replace them and I'd send them on up to the Sea Org. So that was how I was operating as a Sea Org recruiter and on my recruitment projects. And I was considered very successful. That year was a great year for guy to go out and get all those people into the Sea Org who I was not a recruiter. That wasn't my job, but I was on these series of projects to do that, right? And it was as far as methods of recruitment, it's always been about promoting Hubbard said, promote the charisma of the Sea Org. You always, the uniforms and the prestige and the eliteness of it. It's kind of like, the same in the military. They talk about, and promote the special forces and the Green Berets and these guys, right? The special, highly trained guys, the Rangers and those guys. Hardly anybody, I think, joins the military so that they can go be an infantryman. They always have these ideas of grandeur, right, going into this stuff. And of course, you can create that with young people easier than you can with older people. So the Sea Org was sort of the same approach. And it was a guy named Brandon Faust who developed that briefing that I gave a whole video about, where we get into the conspiracy theories and all of the crazy, world, global, 12 men ruling the world thing and how the Sea Org has to save the planet. That all came in the 1990s, late 90s, and through the 2000s. So that's kind of when that method became a thing. But that never fully replaced this other thing of just pushing, people to join. Almost always, 99.9% of the time, Sea Org recruiters are going after Scientologists. You don't want somebody coming in the Sea Org who doesn't truly believe, think that L. Ron Hubbard's the cat's meow, think that Scientology is absolutely the shit, that's the person you're trying to get into the Sea Org, because you're literally talking about dedicating the rest of your life to something. And that's a big commitment. And everybody, who comes in the Sea Org has some concept that that's what they're doing. Nobody gets recruited into the Sea Org on the idea that they're only going to be there for a few years and then they're going to take off. That is no part of the conversation ever. It is lifelong commitment, billion-year contract. You're on board, and you're gonna join, and you're gonna die here. That's kind of the attitude. So I don't know. I think that's a pretty good, all-around take on how that whole thing breaks down. Telecon. Are you familiar with John Alex Wood, Scientology's official UK Twitter troll? Is he most likely being paid for his advocacy work? He's one of the very few people who publicly defend the Church of Scientology on Twitter. Oh yeah, good old John Alex Wood and his girlfriend Gemma. I actually had a run-in with them last week on Twitter. Not common, because I'm on Twitter, but I don't generally go in their direction or try to engage. And at this point, I've blocked them from my channel. They can't see what I'm doing on Twitter, my Twitter channel or my Twitter feed anymore. Because they kind of came, Gemma was taking some swipes at me because I engaged with somebody that they're connected with last week, this woman Kayla, trying to, just sort of do what I've mentioned in past videos of plant some seeds, throw some things in her direction. And there was this great article on Tony Ortega's blog last week to do that with about how Scientology is being funded by Big Pharma. And a great article. And I immediately tweeted it out to this woman, Kayla, And then shenanigans ensued. And then behind the scenes, I think John and Gemma got on and started coaching her because I was starting to make an inroad to her thinking, and then it kind of all went south, and she just kind of went, bleh. And I think that was because of their influence. And I called out Gemma on Twitter for, taking advantage of that woman that way, because it was really, really pretty gross, that they do that. So anyway, you can check out my Twitter feed for that whole thing. But as far as John Alex Wood goes, I've never met the guy. I don't know him. I'd barely recognize him in real life, if I were to meet him. And I don't particularly think I would like the guy, of course. I have spoken with a couple people who interacted with him and knew him, and they didn't particularly have anything great to say about the guy. But I don't know. Is he being paid to do that work? I don't know. I can't actually speak to that. It's very possible. It's not beyond the bounds of reason to think that OSA could be paying him. His girlfriend Gemma, who he met through a Scientology dating site that apparently is Monty Python themed, was not a Scientologist when they first hooked up, and she went from 0 to 100, man. She jumped in there, and she decided that Scientology is the shit, and she decided that she was going to get on Twitter with him and give people a hard time and tweet out nasty things to people like me who are trying to simply talk truth about Scientology. And so it all just becomes sort of this big bait fest on Twitter, and it's Twitter is already the sort of the sewer of the internet in so many ways. So it's not hard for them it's sort of natural really for them to find a home there, John and Gemma, But anyway, I can't really speak too much more about the guy because I've never met him. But if you think about what kind of person would you need to be in order to volunteer, and you would have to have OSA approval to do this. There's no way that any Scientologist in good standing would be able to go on Twitter or go onto YouTube or go anywhere on social media and start engaging with suppressive people like me unless they were church sanctioned to do so. So what kind of person would it take to have the initiative to get okay from the church to do that and then proceed to do it? Right? That kind of answers the question of what's the guy like, right? He's he's what he is. So that's what I have to say about that. Take 5 breaths. Something I've been meaning to ask you. Is it true that OT8 can only be obtained while trapped on their ship? And while getting OT8, these Scientologists are constantly regged between sessions. If it's true, what are the registrars selling people who have reached OT8? Haven't they already paid for every course and bit of text Scientology has to offer in order to get to the OT8 level? Okay, thanks for asking this, because this has shown some points here that need to be, filled in that are, I guess, maybe, not widely understood. So let's go ahead and get into this. No, you do not have to have done everything in order to get up to OT8. There is in Scientology this thing called the Bridge to Total Freedom, and it is a chart, and it has the auditing side and the training side of Scientology services. But that chart does not show every single service that Scientology offers, or at least you don't have to. All those services aren't on those step-by-step progression as you move on up the line. And we'll talk about some specifics of that in a minute. So you can go up the auditing side of that bridge where you start at the purification rundown, objectives, grade 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, clear, OT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can do all those services without really getting over on the training side very much or very high. There's a couple lower level training services that everybody's kind of required to do, but after that, you don't have to become an auditor in Scientology in order to go up to OT8. So when you get to OT8 and they've sold you all the auditing they can sell you, you bet they're going to try to sell you that training. They're going to try to sell you all the materials. They're going to try to sell you services that are not on that grade chart that are auditing services also. For example, a thing called superpower, right, which is this series of rundowns or actions that you do at that great big huge monstrosity of a building that they built in Clearwater. You also have something called the cause resurgence rundown, which happens on the top floor of that big monstrous building that they built, and that consists of running around a pole in the dark for hours at a time. right? The pole's lit up and you run around this track, and it's supposed to cause some sort of spiritual resurgence and experience for you. And so, of course, after running around a pole, I'm sure you're in a brilliant trance-like state, and you're running around in the dark, and you're getting physically exhausted and probably mentally exhausted too, until you have some awesome resurgence, and then this is interpreted as this wonderful spiritual experience. So that is called the Cause Resurgence Rundown, and this couple $1,000 for the privilege of doing that. So those things they can sell you. There are also, you're right, that the only place you can do OT8 is on this ship, and the ship is called the Free Winds, and it sails around down in Aruba, the ABC Islands, the St. Bart's and Curacao, the ABC Islands. So it sails around down there in the Mediterranean, and there are courses that are offered on the Free Winds that you can do when you're not in session doing your OT8. And they'll try to sell you the full gamut of those services, and they have a couple other things they do there. But mainly it's OT8. That's the main reason that ship was purchased and is sailing around. So the main thing that they are regging you for when you're on the ship is not for services, though. The main thing that they're regging you for is trying to get you to donate money to is just straight donations to the International Association of Scientologists, the IAS. It's a Scientology's membership group, and it's just a flat-out money grab. That's all it is, and you get status levels. That's your return on investment for giving money to the IAS. Is you get a label, you get a status. Right? Patron meritorious, patron gloritorious, patron platinum, patron, dragonostus. I mean, it's whatever, right? And that's just money that you're basically burning. You're just throwing it away, because when you give money to the IAS, you have no idea where it's going. You have no idea what it's going to be used for. And you just basically on faith taking that David Miscavige and the church are going to use that money constructively to do disaster relief, to provide illiteracy programs, to bring, the Scientology's anti-drug program education and Narcanon to get people off drugs and all this. None of these things work. They're all ridiculous, and very little IAS money even goes to those things in the first place. But there are IAS grants that will be given to these groups, but for the most part, the money is gathered up, and I don't really know where it goes. So the only person who really does is David Miscavige and some select people at the upper levels of Scientology. So certainly are not transparent. There's no transparency to the donors or the parishioners, and no reporting ever on where that money goes. So, Scientologists are taking a major leap of faith in giving money to the IAS. And when you're a captive audience on the Free Winds, where you literally cannot go anywhere else, and they can track you down to your cabin or to the dining room or wherever you're going to be on the ship, then they have you, and they will reg you. They will work you over for hours at a time on a nearly daily basis. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of people really got fed up with Scientology and with ever going to the Free Winds, because they knew that was going to be the environment they were going to be in. No Scientologist enjoys that, and a lot of them just pull the plug and hit the eject button at that point, because they just can't take the crap anymore. So anyway, that is how that all works. Glory Pacheca. I read on the bunker that David Miscavige has not lived at or even visited Int Base in 5 years. I think this could be a move suggested by lawyers to help build a case that he could not have orchestrated various abuses that have come to light at that location. What do you think this means, Chris, that David Miscavige lives in California now full-time and part-time in Clearwater? I think you could be partially right. I think that there are other reasons that he has not been to the Int Base in 4 or 5 years as well. My take on it is purely, subjective, just guesswork here. I don't do this a lot in terms of throwing out my guesswork on something, like just totally out of whole cloth here. But here's what I'm thinking is happening. I think that David Miscavige has been sick and tired of the people at the international base. And this is the gold base or international base or int management base or whatever else you want to call it, in San Jacinto, California, up in a little town called Hemet. It's just off of there. This is where they have the barbed wire, going both ways, and they have it all fenced in. It's this great big beautiful compound. very well kept up, but a prison, right? It's not an easy place to get out of, and people who have left there have said that they escaped. That's how they got out of there. So this place is not exactly paradise on earth, and since about 1999 or 2000, Miscavige has really been coming down on those people hard, like really laying on the hammer, and I believe that he really thinks that everybody there is working against him, and he is like in this state of mind that especially the management people there are just a bunch of suppressive people. Can't be trusted, can't be utilized, have to be very, very closely watched. They have to constantly be berated. They have to be constantly confessing their sins and crimes. And he just works these guys over and works them over and abuses and abuses and abuses them. This is, like I said, especially true of the executives and the management type people who are there. But no one's immune from his wrath. So the bulk of the people who are at the Gold Base or the International Base are Golden Era Productions staff. There's a few different organizations that exist on the base. Golden Era Productions is the main one. They've got state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line audiovisual equipment, a sound studio, stages, or sound recording studios, a big shooting studio. I mean, it's a real production facility up there. And then you have international management people, and then you have the CMO, you have RTC. So you've got another smaller group of people, maybe 100, I'm guessing, in the management end of things, right? All those other things. And then you got a few hundred people, maybe 400 or 500 people who are making up, and that's at most. I mean, it could be a lot less than that, maybe 500 people total, but who are making up Golden Era Productions. So now, what have we seen in the last couple of years? We've seen that Miscavige, we've seen that the exposure of the human rights abuses and beatings and various things that have been going on up there the word started coming out on that in the mid-2000s. And that was a huge PR nightmare for the Church of Scientology. And of course, that just infuriated Miscavige even more, that people would be coming out and exposing his own crimes. So he wasn't down with that. And that probably got him into a frame of mind that no one at this base could be trusted, because any of them could want to leave at any time, and they'd have to get paid off, and they have to readjust how they're going to, get rid of people, because when they were getting rid of Mark Headley, or when Marty Rathbun blew, or Mike Rinder blew, they were just taken off. So now what I understand they're doing is they're actually paying big bucks to people who are leaving to sign non-disclosure agreements that actually have teeth, and so when they leave, they can't really talk. That's what I'm sort of gathering from what's happening these days, which is why you're not hearing a lot about people who are taken off from there. It's not that people aren't taken off. It's just you're not hearing about it that way. So Miscavige is now like, well, I can't, he was exposed. Now he can't trust these people to keep their mouths shut, and he doesn't trust them to do their jobs. He doesn't trust them to forward Scientology. So he just was like, okay, I'm washing my hands of this place. And he goes over to Clearwater, or he goes over to any one of his multiple other places he can live in the world. He's got apartments and setups in Los Angeles and a few places, and Paris and England and, Europe. I mean, and the guy's got enough money he can purchase whatever sort of palatial estate he really wants, actually. I mean, he could do a whole Joel Osteen if he really wanted to. He kind of already has, but now that he's not going to the Gold Base, he can go to these other places. So he's probably just said, okay, I'm washing my hands of this place. You guys just figure it out for yourselves. Then the other thing that's happened fairly recently is the KCET studios were purchased and renovated at great expense, millions of dollars sunk into it. And a lot of us were sitting there watching that happen going, why are they doing that? Because they've got the same production facilities already created up at Gold Base. Yet we have this thing of Miscavige doesn't trust any of those people and blah, 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 blah. So if he wanted to, he could have purchased the KCET studio with the idea of shutting Gold down and moving a lot of those people down to that new Scientology media productions. I shouldn't call it the KCET studio because it's Scientologyized, and it's the Scientology media productions, or SUMP. facility. And so he could bring those technically trained AV professionals from gold down to sump and stick them there and transfer all the functions, right? And one idea that I've talked about with some others with no basis in, like, you know, nobody's heard that this is happening. No one's thinking this is a foregone conclusion, but it certainly could be that Miscavige could eventually just shut down the gold base entirely. Just close it all off, transfer all of its personnel to other places in the world where they can do those same functions or do different ones, because the Sea Org is very... When you're in the Sea Org, you never know what you're going to be doing from one day to the next. You could be a senior executive one day, janitor the next. So they could easily move all those gold people to LA. They could move the management people to LA to there's a 12-story building on Hollywood Boulevard called the Hollywood Guarantee Building, which is the upper middle management of functions of Scientology all happen in that building. There's plenty of room in that building for another 100 people if they wanted to bring all those management people from the gold base and make the HGB the international management headquarters, which it kind of already is now, since they're really not doing a whole lot of management from the gold base. So they could just move those people there, or they could, you know, ship them off to Australia or Canada, Europe, wherever, you know, wherever, you know, some of those people would end up going, where Miscavige would never have to have his eyes on them again, right? That's something Scientology does, which is why Shelley Miscavige has been disappeared for so many years. So all of that is just, like I said, supposition on my part, but maybe that's what's happening up there. Andy Lesser. In the years after you've been out of Scientology, have you ever found yourself experiencing the feeling of euphoria that you experienced when going clear about something unrelated to Scientology? If so, did your critical brain step in and question the reason for such feelings? I imagine your recent engagement to Melissa would produce some euphoria, but I'm speaking about something related to discovering different philosophies or ideologies, or even getting better at critical thinking itself. I could imagine after having such a bad experience with euphoria generated by undue influence and manipulation, you might be skeptical of anything that felt similar. Thanks, Andy. Great question. And no, I actually experience that kind of euphoria or you know, great feeling, you know, all the time. And here's how it works. I'm not backed off from or afraid of it or feeling like it's got a bad rap to feel really great or feel really invigorated or alive because of past experiences in Scientology. I've separated out, you know, what caused that and what causes this enough that I'm very comfortable with feeling, you know, great in life. And the thing that, well, here's the thing. I am a writer before I'm anything else. That's what I always thought was, you know, since I've been doing this channel and doing my work here, I've always thought of myself as that first. And of course, I write my videos before I shoot them and put them out to you guys. And I've written a book. I've got, you know, more stuff in the hopper, so to speak. So writing creates that with me. When I am really on, when I am like in touch with the muse and inspired and just, you know, just pounding it out right here, you know, I just sit here and just researching and writing and putting it all together. Sometimes I just feel so inspired and so on with what I'm doing. And that is a great, great feeling. It is really nice to be in the groove, you know what I mean? And that's kind of, you know, how I would describe that. And when I finish writing something like that, you know, and you get that like, oh, this is just the best, you know, kind of feeling, it's monumental. You know, it just feels really good. And after that comes producing the video, creating, you know, that kind of creation also can really get me going sometimes. And then you put it out there and people start responding to it, and I get some really nice feedback. The feedback doesn't really create that for me. You know, it's really great to hear from you guys. I love it. I don't mean to demean it or anything or make it seem like you guys giving me positive feedback doesn't mean anything, because it does. But it's not the same as the creation part of it, right? That is where I feel more alive than anything else that I'm really doing. So I've had that happen all kinds of times, and it's the kind of thing that I know I am very lucky to be able to do that for a living, and I know that I've got some degree of skill and ability in that area. So it just seems like the right thing for me to be doing. And of course, with your guys' support, I'm able to do this for a living, and I hope that more people out there can do for themselves what makes that happen for them, because I know it's really kind of sucky that a lot of people have to go to a 9-to-5 and they don't enjoy it. They don't ever get any euphoria or feelings of satisfaction or happiness from what they're doing, and I just really think that sucks. And of course I can relate, because that's because I had my own time of doing that for quite a few years. So anyway, that's what I can say about that for now. And that is our brand new Flash Answers introduction. So I am now going to give you ridiculously short answers to some really good questions. Joel Greenlee, I see that you wear a lot of comic book related t-shirts. Do you have any favorite characters? Any favorite creators? I'm a huge fan myself, and I think it would be lots of fun to hear what you are interested in. Related question, do you know of any creators that are Scientologists and have wanted to use comics as a way of possible influence? Hey, thanks for the question. So first off, I'm not aware of any Scientologists who are using the comic book medium or anything like that to get the word out there. The only creators I've seen Scientology-wise have been here on YouTube, where there's a channel called Reckless Tortuga, which has a couple Scientologists who, well, the channel's pretty much only Scientologists doing, what they think are very funny videos that I'm sort of, yeah, they're all right. So there's that. Now, as far as my comic book fandom goes, I'm actually a big fan of the movies. Okay, Marvel Cinematic Universe, DC Cinematic Universe are what I follow closely. I used to be a comic book reader when I was a teenager, and I had a collection and even had them in the cardboard with the, in the plastic bags. But I kind of had to sell all those off when I joined staff, and then they were all gone by the time I joined the Sea Org. And when I came back around after leaving the Sea Org, I kind of looked into comics again and thought, after reading a few and looking into some storylines, that it was kind of really, sort of soap operas with superpowers was kind of what comic books are. And I couldn't really get back into them again. It just didn't really get to me. But the movies, from Iron Man forward, I have been absolutely enraptured by the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Spider-Man Homecoming, really good addition. And I really can't wait for Infinity War Part 1 and 2. So I'd say Stan Lee's really pretty high on my list of creators. And then as far as the DC universe goes, it was going to hell in a handbasket at a very fast rate with Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman. They were not good movies. But Wonder Woman turned all that around. And I have high hopes for Justice League, because Wonder Woman was such quality and such a turnaround for them that I'm hoping that DC has seen the light and is getting rid of Zack Snyder's influence. So we'll see what happens with that. Lena Sith Lady, I was wondering if you have ever done one of those wacky Scientology testimonials that sometimes pop up. For some reason I am intrigued by them and I have no idea why. Nope, I have never been in one of the Scientology testimonial videos that they produce for their events, where you see wide-eyed, googly Scientologists saying ridiculous things about how they are now, free of the physical universe, and they can slow down time, and they can see particles in space, and they can feel their, satanic abilities and this sort of thing. I never was in any of that, and I look back on it now and I just can't believe I ever thought that any of that had any validity. Vitamin Dubaya, why wouldn't they perform services for FBI members? Isn't their goal to save the whole world? No, silly. The goal of Scientology is to make money. That is the goal. Come on. And even within the world of Scientology, the goal is actually to make the able more able. It is not necessarily to save the whole world, meaning every person in it, because the world has got millions of suppressive people in it. and Scientology ain't so interested in saving them. So the FBI, for example, all the alphabet agencies, in fact, are all looked at with suspicion and distrust, and Hubbard never had anything good to say about the FBI. And so agents of the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and all these groups are not going to get, allowed to be doing services, nor are their family, or, that's just how Scientology doesn't like those guys, because they know in the past that those organizations have worked against Scientology, and they think in their sort of paranoid way that those organizations still care very much about Scientology and really want to do away with it, and so they can't trust any of those people. So that's how that works. Okay, and so we've reached the end of another episode. If you have not considered supporting me on this channel, go ahead and please think about doing so. Your help, your support, your love is what keeps this channel going. The best way to do that is to hook up on patreon.com/Chris Shelton and become part of my Patreon support network. Otherwise, there is, of course, a blue PayPal button there, and of course, there's also the critical merchandise and buying my book, Scientology A to Xenu, An Insider's Guide to What Scientology is Really All About. Enough said. See you guys next week. Thanks for coming around.